Hello there, DML enjoyer. Good news! The DML Dragon Grid isn't quite the same as Dragon City's Dragon Grid. Bad news! It's infinitely worse. I wish I was joking, but somehow this event looks, on the surface from what we know so far, to be infinitely worse than I imagined it would be, which, if you heard me talking about it yesterday, I didn't exactly have high hopes for this event. Dungeon is going to be an integral part of this event, even more so than it was before. So if you were bored of doing dungeon resets from the previous Divine and Ancient events, you'll be glad to know you'll have to do it every single week for this event from the looks of things. I have to say, we don't have the full balancing information, as always, so full proper thoughts are only going to be able to come out when the event is actually here and we play it and see exactly how it plays out. But from this video here, new event Dragon Grid Explained by DML, which was released a few hours ago, it's not looking good. Now, we will go through this piece by piece because we did see this social media post that showed this grid, and essentially you've got like a health and attack bar, or a total HP bar, I guess, on your dragon, and say stepping on a specific tile, you'll see that there's one that's got 0, so if you were to step on that one, it would do 0 damage. However, this is a trap tile, and so every time you move, it seems like the trap comes up, so if you were to step on that tile, you'd actually get hit from the looks of it. Whereas if you went to the right, it would go down and then you wouldn't get hit by it, because it's almost like Super Mario Galaxy with those blocks that change every second. That's how my brain processes it anyway. But then you'll face a dragon and they'll deal 3 damage and you'll take that hit. And essentially you're looking for tickets. Problem is, we've got levels, and you'll see that on this still image here it's level 18. If you fail during a level, you lose all of the rewards that you've collected. So if you collect something like tickets or whatever else, but then you die in the middle of the level, that's it. You lose all of that. Which is another fantastic part about this event so far. But I guess we'll go from start to finish. We'll listen to what Adam has to say, and I'm going to go through exactly why this sounds utterly, utterly dreadful. And it's not just me saying that. I've seen lots of really not very happy people on Facebook. I've seen some unhappy people in different parts of YouTube. I've seen some really unhappy people on Discord. It's just like Treasure Hunt. People are saying they don't like this. And yet we're going to get it anyway. Can't wait. Anyway.
What's up, Dragon Masters? I'm Adam, a community manager on DML, and I'm here to talk about the latest event coming to Dragolandia, Dragon Grid. While the Tyrant event and the Dragon Grid go hand in hand, it's within this puzzling event that you'll collect Tyrant tickets.
One other thing I will mention is they mentioned there that this is where we're going to get Tyrant tickets from, and you can see that in the image for the Dragon Grid there's like food, there's a chest, and there's tickets. Another thing to note is that the tickets have a specific colour. And we don't have the details right now, but people are hypothesizing that the reason that we have these specific colours is because they think a specific coloured ticket is going to give a specific dragon, or specific dragon pieces. If that's the case, this is even worse, because then if, say, 1 week we only get purple tickets, week 2 we only get green tickets, then you're going to be forced to do your dungeon grind on that week if you want that dragon. No matter what's happening in your real life or anything else, you're gonna have to grind that week. I'm just throwing that out there. We don't have that confirmed right now, but it is a possibility, and people seem to believe that that very much could happen. So, just throwing it out there.
The concept itself is fairly simple. Move your dragon avatar around the 3x3 grid, trying to minimise the damage you receive while searching for tickets and other lovely rewards. You control your dragon avatar either by tapping or swiping in the direction that you want to go. Armed with a certain amount of power visible in the top right of the tile, you must plan your path around the grid to survive as long as you can.
So essentially this whole grid thing is basically, can you add and subtract? Wow, if you can't, then yeah, maybe this is not the game or the event, or maybe you should go back to primary school. But it's essentially like, you see a dragon has 2, it's going to reduce 2 from your total. You see food has a 2 heart, that means it's going to give you +2. It's not exactly the most It's not exactly a very complex event in that sense. It's literally, can you plus or minus numbers? I hope that you can. For any dyslexic folks, I hope that you don't misread those numbers. But that's the whole concept behind how this event works. And it looks like this is level 1. It shows in the top left. This is level 1. So these are going to be the stats at level 1. We're gonna go against void dragons that deal 2 damage. We're gonna give food that gives +2, and you can see that there's a ticket there. So the idea would be to collect the ticket and then keep moving on, get the next ticket, so on and so on.
Your power level is represented with 2 numbers, your current power on the left and your maximum on the right, with the former increasing and decreasing as you move around the grid. The grid itself is littered with dangers that will deal damage, reducing your current power. The number in the corner of these damaging tiles represents how much of your power will be reduced, so try to think strategically as you move around to limit the damage you take. Trap tiles are special in that they come in 2 possible states, active or inactive. They will alternate between these 2 states, but will only deal damage when active, and are safe to step on when they aren't. There are beneficial tiles too. Food tiles will heal any lost power, but not over the maximum, while chests will get you bonus rewards, which are unlocked once the level is complete.
So yeah, you can see from all of this that as you go up in the levels, for example, this is level 18, you can see that we'll go against the dragon that deals 5 damage, and then there's another dragon that deals 3 damage. The traps deal 4 damage. So the higher the levels that you're on, the more damage these are going to do. And so then you'd be thinking, we've only got 30 health maximum, and as we go through, we're going to lose HP. Like, this level here looks dreadful, right? Like, this is just full of damaging traps and dragons. So this would be a hard level to survive in, right? Thing is, even if we're at 30 max, are we going to get to a point where we just physically cannot keep going up in levels because we're going to need more than 30 HP total? In that case, we're not going to be able to use this fire dragon, or we're going to have some other method of going beyond 30 HP. And this is where the big problem with this event arises, and they're not actually going to mention it until right at the end of the video, but we will go through that then.
There's also the option to use shields, hard to find power-ups that can be activated whenever you like to completely negate the damage from the next harmful tile you land on.
They also said with these shields here that provide protection to get through specific levels, that they're hard to find. Does that mean that it confirms that the bonuses and rewards are random? Well, there's no confirmation, but that's what it sounded like to me from that. They're hard to find. If it was pre-generated, it would say, you will find them. But that's not what they said. They said they are hard to find. So I'm really not sure that I like the sound of that. Maybe it's just not completely accurate phrasing on this, but it is completely random in terms of how these tiles generate. Some people are going to have an awful time, and other people's might have a really easy time getting through these tiles, and that's a big problem, because this was supposed to be an event based on logical thinking and adding and subtracting, but then there's tons of RNG involved. Great! Ugh.
Each level has a set number of tickets to find, and once achieved, you'll be taken to the reward screen, and the next level can begin. Each attempt at the level costs energy, and if you take too much damage and hit 0 or below, then your run is over and you'll need to pay energy to start again. However, any tickets or chests already collected in the previous run will be lost.
So there they go. They confirm that anything that you collected while you were doing your run, you fail and you don't get the rewards. So you can pay to revive to not lose your progress. This really doesn't bode well, because as soon as you see something like this, the question is, have they made this mandatory that you have to spend gems to revive to keep going? Because if they do, and they require a lot of this to be able to say, you know, get the tyrant reward dragons, then it's just going to be a pay-to-win event. It really does depend on how they've balanced the base game, and whether someone, you know, with a base fire dragon going around there, if they're smart, can you actually get the necessary rewards? And you're still going to be logging in. It's just, instead of us being based on resets, we have an energy system now, which is more or less the same thing, except if you want to log in, say every 70 minutes to use one of your energy, you can. You don't have to, but there's still a max energy cap limit that will increase based on the level that you're on, from the looks of it.
Levels will increase in difficulty as you play, meaning higher strength enemy dragons, more frequent traps, harder to find tickets, and so on. The energy cost for each run will also increase as the levels get harder.
So the energy cost is going to increase as we go. The dragons are going to become more difficult to defeat. Then we're going to get more energy as we go along, but is that energy increase set? Because this is level, what is that, level 43? And at this point they seem to have 12 energy. Doesn't seem like a whole heap of energy considering how many levels they've gone up, but, you know, depends on how it actually plays.
Energy itself is restored automatically over time, up until a maximum cap. As you progress through the levels, you'll also earn greater and greater energy boosts, which reduces the time it takes to generate 1 energy.
So, we do get an increase to the energy boost. So 1 energy from every 70 minutes goes down to every 65 minutes, and maximum energy increase from 3 to 5. Next energy boost is at level 16, and this was on level 8. So your next energy boost is another 8 levels, so that's basically doubling the amount of levels at this point from the recording. But that means that we're going to get extra energy sooner, so the further into the event you are, the sooner you're going to have to log in, because you're going to get energy more frequently, therefore you're going to hit the cap more frequently, therefore you're going to have to log in more frequently. I guess it depends on how high the energy increase goes alongside the reduction in energy usage, but that's how it could end up working out. But it's, you know, more energy to use is great, but if it gets more difficult as we go along anyway, it seems sort of pointless.
One last thing to mention. If you're able to unlock the main reward dragon from the bottomless dungeon during the week that Dragon Grid is active, then that dragon will become your new avatar in the Dragon Grid.
This is where the big problem begins. Because they've just said that if you manage to get the dragon from the dungeon chest that week, while the grid is active for that specific grid, that dragon will become your avatar dragon for the event. And you'll see that in this case, this dragon has 30 damage, 40 max, which means it's 10 higher than the basic fire dragon, which you can imagine that if you're going around in a set of grids where these enemy dragons are taking HP/damage off of you, it's going to be very, very necessary, probably later on, depending on, you know, the later level difficulties, to have this. This is where the big problem comes, because getting the dungeon dragon, you can get the dungeon dragon out of any dungeon chests when you play the dungeon. But most of the time you'll have to open up that purple dungeon chest multiple times before you get a dragon. Sometimes you won't even see it once until you've opened up that purple dungeon chest 15 times. 15 times is where you get the dragon guaranteed. That's not going to happen every time. You might get it in your second purple chest. You might even get it on a blue chest on your way through. But usually, for anyone that's ever played the dungeon, you normally get it in that purple chest at the end. Just because of how, you know, luck is and the actual drop rates for the dungeon dragon on your way up. So if they haven't changed the dungeon balancing, as in the percentages to get the dungeon dragon, this is just going to be completely pay to win. Because you're going to have to get this dragon for the boosted stats at the beginning of that dungeon week as soon as possible, which means you're going to have to grind for that purple chest as soon as possible. And if each dungeon week, or each grid week I should say, has specific tickets for a specific dragon, you're going to have to do that every single week. So you know how before we got the choice of which dungeon week we could grind? So, you know, we go, oh, that's a burnout dungeon, we don't want that one, so we'll ignore dungeon this week. And then you'll get a void one the week after. It's like, oh, I don't want a void week because my team's not good, I'm going to pick the next week instead. You can't do that if those tickets are limited to a specific grid week. You have to grind that week. So even if we get the worst dungeon week possible, you're going to have to grind it. This is a big problem. It's a absolutely astronomical problem, especially since players were saying they're bored of dungeon already, and now it seems like they're trying to force it every single week of the event. I'm just not going to do it. Honestly speaking, if that is how this event has been designed and that's how it's going to play out, I'm not going to do dungeon grinding by Tuesday of every week for 4 weeks. It's not going to happen. And that's myself, who normally has a lot of spare gems. I've got a decent dungeon team, not the best team ever, but I'm not going to do it. I would rather do probably literally anything else than that. I would never sit there and grind dungeon for 4 weeks. And trying to force me to do it for a bunch of light titans that don't even look that good? Absolutely not. This is the biggest problem with this event, and they haven't even gotten to the kicker yet.
Since this means higher starting power level and a higher max capacity of power, it can be quite helpful to unlock the Dungeon Dragon as soon as possible. If you already have the Dungeon Dragon, you'll still need to unlock it again to earn this advantage.
Even if you already have the Dungeon Dragon, you need to get it out of the dungeon again. So even if you have a duplicate of one of these and you hatch it, it sounds like that's not going to work. You actually have to go through, play the dungeon that week, and get the dragon out of that chest to be able to get the bonus damage / HP. So, not only are they expecting you to grind dungeon for 4 weeks of this event, they're expecting you to grind dungeon for 4 weeks of this event for dragons that you possibly already have. I have no idea who thought that this was a good idea on the Gameloft team, but this is the opposite of what players were asking for. They wanted less dungeon grind, because we have had dungeon for like every single event for so long now. It has become so monotonous, so boring. This is not what players want. Obviously everyone's got their own different opinions and their own preferences for things that they like. But when you force anyone to do the exact same dungeons in the exact same way every single week for every single event, close to everyone is gonna get bored of it. And this thing that players have been telling you for like the last year is boring beyond belief. You're forcing more of it. I really don't know. Like, even if you're capable of dungeon grinding like myself and lots of other players, it's the fact we don't want to do that. You know, it's not enjoyable. It's not fun anymore. It's boring. It's incredibly boring. And throwing us at this new grid style event doesn't change that if it becomes dependent on dungeon, which we didn't want included. I was so looking forward to being over dungeons and them not being a part of this event. But saying all of that, that would only be a requirement if it is absolutely essential that you get this dragon with the boosted stats. If we can do the entire event just with the fire dragon with his 30 attack points, and we can do it with him, that's fine. But then I don't understand why they'd include this dungeon mechanic unless it was a vital part of the event, you know what I mean? Like, why would they include this unless they just want to say, hey, if you get this dungeon dragon, you're gonna have an easier time. But maybe it is the skeptic in me. I highly doubt that. Because again, you're gonna get to a certain level where either it's gonna be complete RNG as to whether you can finish it or not, or it may just be outright impossible unless you've got at least above 30 HP. So I really, really am not looking forward to this. Those are my legitimate thoughts on this. That's the end of the video, by the way. So there are still some questions, and people have been saying with these videos we're getting more questions than actual answers these days, which I think is true. They did say that they'd be willing to put out, you know, more information answering questions, which is great. We don't have them right now. But, you know, it's questions like, how often are these shields gonna be popping up on the map exactly? Is it completely random? Are the energy boosts that we get predetermined, as in set based on level, or are they gonna be random? Is this dungeon dragon absolutely essential? I really don't know. I honestly have nothing positive to say about this event whatsoever. Maybe it will be slightly more interesting to click around in tiles and understanding how I can -4 from 34, which would be, wow, so difficult. Very, very enticing to my brain. But yeah, I've really got nothing positive to say about this event whatsoever at this point. I wish I did. I had no hopes for this event, and it's actually worse than I thought it would be. Maybe this looks enticing to you. If it does, I am happy. But this screams RNG in terms of dungeon, getting the dungeon dragon. It screams RNG if any of these tile placements are random, which I imagine they probably are, but we don't know yet. Honestly, they would have been better off going with Dragon City's Dragon Grid. It would have been better than this. I don't want the Dragon City Dragon Grid, but it would have been infinitely better than this. I'm absolutely gobsmacked that this is what they went with. Of all the things they could have possibly made, this is a new event. They could have done anything they wanted. And this is what they choose to make. I'm sorry, Gameloft. This is bad. If you are relying on that Dungeon Dragon. If you are relying on that Dungeon Dragon for people to get their tyrants and forcing them to do dungeon every week, then I'm probably not even going to play this event, to be honest.